So before we do a deep dive into object-oriented programming, classes, design patterns, we're going to start by just recapping the basics, the most important parts of JavaScript objects. So JavaScript objects, or a plain old JavaScript object, a POJO for short, can be created with curly braces, most commonly, or also using the new and then capital O object syntax. Both of these create a brand new empty object. An object, of course, is a key value data store. We store some value using a key that we can use to retrieve that data later on. For example, let's make a simple object called pet. Here, of course, it's an empty object. If I do type of and then pet, we see, yep, that's an object. When I declare my object literal, I can also add key value pairs. So I'll do my dog. So I'll do species is dog, and his name is Elton, and his age is like 1.5 or something like that. All right, kind of unfortunate wrapping there, but 1.5. So these keys don't need quotes. This is all hopefully recap, but they will all be turned into strings when they're stored. We don't see that here, but we'll see that in a moment. We have our key value pairs, age, name, and species. I can access data out using two notations, using the dot notation, like pet.age, pet.species. I can also use the square bracket notation, where I provide the name of a key, and it does need to be in quotes. So pet age, in quotes, gives me 1.5. This is often more convenient. However, this syntax supports expressions. What if I had a variable called, I don't know, how about key? Key is going to be equal to species. If I try and access from my pet using the key as the key within the square brackets, this will be evaluated first. It will be turned into the value species, right? That's the string, and we'll get dog. So I'll just demonstrate that. Pet square brackets key with a Y, and we get dog. If I try to do the same thing with the dot notation, it will look for a literal property called key that doesn't exist, and so we get undefined. Which brings me to my next point. Properties that don't exist always evaluate to undefined. Unlike other languages, say like Python, which will throw an error, in JavaScript, if you try and access a property that doesn't exist, we just always get undefined. I can do that right there, or square brackets. Clearly that key does not exist. Nothing's wrong, we don't get an error. It just kind of says, well, I didn't find anything. Undefined. Very important behavior to understand. It's also important to understand that all of our key names are going to get stringified. So in this example, we have some object called O1, and I'm storing the string hello under the key of 1, the number 1. And then next, I am storing the string goodbye under the string 1. The question is, what is the value of O1, the name of our object, square brackets, the number 1? On this line, we set O of 1, square bracket 1, to be hello. And then on this line, we actually overrode it because all of these keys are stringified. So if I do O of 1 with a number, it doesn't matter if it's a number or a string, it's going to be turned into a string. And that's why we get goodbye. So I'll just demonstrate that here. Let's set pet of true. So that's a Boolean value. This would be a weird thing to do, but we'll set it to be hello, just like that. If I look at my pet, we see true is a key in here, and I can access it out using the Boolean true, but behind the scenes, this is turned into a string and will give me the exact same value if I had done this instead. They refer to the exact same property. So that's also very important to understand. The keys will be stringified. Now, as far as the values, we can put whatever we want as the value in an object. We can do numbers, as we've seen. We can do strings. We can put other objects in there, right? I could do pet.friends equals an array. If we look at pet, we've got an array in there. I can put other nested objects, and importantly, I can put functions in there. Very common to do as well, and a very key part of object-oriented programming throughout the rest of this section. So we can define any property we want, set it equal to a function. It can be an arrow function, it can be a regular function expression like you see here. It doesn't really matter. It can matter when it comes to the keyword this, but we'll talk about that later. So let's add a function onto pet. Pet.bark equals a function that just returns woof woof. We look at our pet. It has a key called bark, and then I can execute that function with parentheses. This is what we would call a method. So whatever the value is, JavaScript doesn't really care. It can be a function, a number, a string, any other primitive, an object, whatever you want. But the key itself is always going to be stringified. So that's a brief recap of the basics of working with objects. I'm sure that was boring and repetitive for a lot of you. Hopefully you just kind of skipped through it. Now we can get to the important stuff around object orientation.